Well, good morning. Good morning, all. Welcome to week 2 of Hume 3:10 Faith, Living, and Learning. I want to thank you all for the amazing discussion and sharing on week 1. Wow. Uh, your metaphors were wonderful. I really enjoyed uh, the way you presented yourselves and the way you talked about them and the images and ideas that you put forth. Really thoughtful and stimulating. And so thank you for that. Also, thank you for that great discussion. Was that discussion around honor and humanity and integrity and friendship and trust that I've been privileged to be part of. It's one of the best I've been in for a long while. I'm so looking forward to the next 6 weeks. Of my time with you and where you are going to take us all on this amazing journey. So good for you. Thanks so much. I do want to remind you of that one little rule from the about discussion that requires a minimum of 3 entries for each discussion, one initial roughly 250-word response to the beginning questions, and then 2 other comments related to what others have said or something I've said in response, or even sharing a new insight that you may have had as a result of the discussion after you've had some time to think further about it. So try to keep to the minimum, even though some of you have already far exceeded that minimum. I'm really grateful for that. This week we consider another kind of hero of the faith. Last week was our friend Thomas à Becket. This week his name is Oscar Romero, often referred to as the martyred Archbishop of El Salvador. Oscar is a 20th century hero. Check out the information online about him. It may help you have some context for what's going on in this film. I do want to point out that the first 3 folks we're talking about, maybe this is obvious to everybody, but the first 3 folks are real people. Henry, Thomas, and Oscar are all real folks living in time in particular places and countries struggling with real issues. This story takes place in a very difficult time in El Salvador. It is a time, as you will see, that the U.S. had some real interest in it. It's also one of the kind of darker sides of our story. But the questions remain pretty much the same. I think they are basic human questions that always bring us back to this same basic, fundamental, I think in some ways the most important human question we have. How then shall I live? Or how then shall we live? Each of these persons is confronted by that question. Something happens in their lives, a big change happens in their lives, over which they practically have no control. Henry makes Thomas Archbishop. The church appoints Romero Archbishop. Neither really wants it, but they're stuck with it. And that decision or that direction over which they have no control leads them to face up to this question in light of what's going on in the world around me, in this world that I have minimal control over. It's a question that we all deal with, right? I believe certain things. My character is about a certain set of values. The world I live in is a certain kind of world. Or at least I understand the world in a certain way. In light of those 3 things and my understanding of them, how do I live with integrity? How do I live with congruence and faithfully and trustworthily? How do I live when so much of my life is not under my control? I'm looking forward to your discussion about Romero, and probably some of you will want to go back and talk about Becket again and the choices that Romero makes. We also add another text into the course this week, Anne Lamott's Traveling Mercies. This is a collection of essays and reflections about one person's real life struggles and triumphs with faith, living, and learning. There is a brief reflective essay required for this book as well, but the purpose of assigning this book is the same as the reason we're looking at the films. Often considering how another person lives in the world, attempting to live with integrity and dignity can help us understand ourselves and our world and our struggles better. Now, I love Anne Lamott. She's not everybody's cup of tea. I know that. And some of you may not like her very much. I think most of you will. But I love her. And I think she takes us to some important areas of life. We also begin a series of life mapping activities this week. Read through the directions on this carefully. It's going to call forth some of your creativity and discernment. A lot of looking inside. Life mapping is an important self-reflective, self-assessing tool. It's been very significant in my life. I think you will find it a helpful tool in your own. In this course, we work at life mapping in 3 parts, actually 4 parts, but I'll talk more about that 4th part later. The first that's due this week is the simplest one. It's kind of the most straightforward one. What are the key events, locations, places, homes, schools, churches, so forth, where I have lived to date, where I have hung out, where I have done life to date? Now, the key word is key. Not all events and places and persons are formative. That is, not all events and places change us. So consider only those that carry significance in your life. Next week, we'll work on relationships, and on the following week, we'll work on spirituality. Both of those are a little heavier and more demanding. But this forms a kind of a baseline in our life mapping. 3 major components of our lives. Now, I've posted online an example that you may want to look at of a life map that I did, of that first stage of life map. And I will do one of those each week also. But those are just for you to consider maybe as prompts, although there are lots of prompts in the syllabus on Moodle to help you. So feel free to look at that. Feel free to ignore it. There's no commentary that goes with it. It's just kind of an illustration. Finally, we will consider significant thinkers who have been highly influential in the development of the ways we think about the world we live in, the human beings around us, God, gods, and the life. The first 2 are Aristotle and Plato. Although they lived millennia ago, many consider them to this day, and I'm one of those who think so, to be 2 of the most foundationally influential persons to have ever lived. You and I today knowingly and unknowingly connect to their worldviews one way or the other. You're more Aristotelian or you're more Platonic, and I hope you'll understand what that means by the time you're through with this exercise. You choose one of them. You don't have to do both Aristotle and Plato, just Aristotle or Plato. Do the research using the resources that we've provided for you and answer some key questions. Again, follow the directions and it will all work out just fine. Well, enough of me and for me today. Let me encourage you to direct any questions or concerns you have directly to me. We're in the last 2 weeks of the traditional program on the Tabor campus of Warner Pacific. Life is busy and complicated, but I'll always try to respond as quickly and helpfully as possible. If your question is urgent, feel free to text me at my phone number that's provided on Moodle. But remember to let me know who you are and that you're connected to this course so I'll know how to respond. Well, enough, as I said. Blessings on the journey. Looking forward to the next 4 weeks with you eagerly. See you around. Bye-bye.